to know everybody. I see new faces every time. That's really good. I can start by myself. I'm Yamel Natividad, BIM coordinator for Public Club.
I'm Rui Liu. I'm an assistant professor in UTSA here, construction science program. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having us here.
I'm James Rodriguez with Easy Drive, San Antonio, Austin.
Chuck Meese, I'm on the business development team at Autodesk.
Lindsay Goodman, I'm a regional territory manager covering this area for Autodesk as well.
Luis Bruin, BIM manager for Bartlett Cott.
Marshall Laswell, I'm at A&M San Antonio, Director of Facilities and Physical Plant.
Selena Delaney, Computer Services, then CAD designer for the ductwork.
Natalia Salinas, Southwest Electric, BIM CAD.
My name is Darrell. I'm the BIM guy and project manager, coordinator, designer at Locust Halls Architects.
Eric Maldonado, intern at BNA Architects.
Michael Mendez, I'm a director with Alpha Consulting Engineers.
Tony Medina, BIM manager for Alpha Consulting Engineers.
I'm Jonathan McCauley, senior designer for Ultraman Inc.
Bruce M, senior designer for Ultraman.
Daryl Smith, with Mendicant Architect. I do consulting for Revit, Navisworks training, and then I'm also a reseller for Assemble, Advanced 2000, which is the cloud computing, and a program called Lumion, which does rendering and animation.
I'm Mike Sanford. I'm the BIM coordinator for Spalglass Contractors in Austin.
Pedro Ibanez, I'm a First Construction and BIM intern at Bartlett Cott.
Bill Muskos with Construction Science.
All right, thanks everybody for coming. Really quick, we always go through updates for the peer group. We have 3 branches that are developed. One in San Antonio, the Alamo area. We have one in Austin that is pretty active as well. And in Houston, they are as well pretty active. And we all communicate to each other. We always try to update everyone about their meetings as well. If you ever happen to stop by Austin or Houston at a time they have a meeting, you are welcome to assist one of them. And so we have a web page for the peer group in general. So far, Houston area has been go ahead and develop, and so all the information that is there right as of right now is for the Houston area, but we'll in the future incorporate Austin and Alamo as well, Alamo area as well. We also have another means of communication with everybody through LinkedIn. All of the subgroups are there. We also have a blog that Bruce from help us to develop. We still don't know how much work it will take for everybody to keep developing that.
Yeah, we just need to continue the conversation with the Houston BIM peer group over there, the guys developing that particular site, to see what we can blend together from your concept and the path that they're headed down. We just haven't had that conversation yet. But it's on the list of things to do.
Yeah, it's on the way. We little by little are working on everything. We also have a YouTube channel, a private channel for the BIM peer group. So far, the Alamo area is being developing and posting all the videos for the presentations. So far, we just have the first one, which was back in May.
Yes.
And the one from last meeting on June.
June 26th.
That's
Today. The last meeting on June 26th, yeah, today, uploaded to YouTube.
Okay, so that's been uploaded.
Yeah, and so that's why it's important for us to, if there's a sign sheet going around, if you have your email address, I mean, our 2 primary means of communication are going to be through LinkedIn and through the YouTube channel. So if you ever can't make one of these meetings, Pedro is going to be recording it, posting it. You can go back and view the content later on afterwards. And the reason that it's private is so that it's not you're actually a member of this group, so it's only going to your specific email address, and you're the only ones that can actually view that contact. We were trying to it's not really fair to open it up to everybody else that didn't make the time to come to the group. So if we have your email address, we can invite you to that. Also, the notifications, it's really a lot easier for us to push those out through LinkedIn. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you should join it if for no other reason to be a part of the Alamo area.
So is the LinkedIn or the BIM group LinkedIn page, I guess, one separate entity aside from the Alamo one?
Right. So
it is.
The original concept was we started a BIM peer group for the state of Texas, right? And then within that we have 4 subgroups: one for DFW, one for Austin, one for San Antonio, and one for Houston. So you kind of got to request to join both. So you got to request to join the main one, and then you got to request to join the subgroup ones.
Okay.
A little bit cumbersome, but we try to keep it all together so that we're all kind of talking about the same thing, so we can kind of see that feed come through each week.
I have listed on the agenda the just recent meeting for Austin that was yesterday. I don't know if anybody, Darrell, you
It's always the first Tuesday of the month, and it's always in North Austin at a place called Mr. Tramp's. I figured. But it's actually a neat little pub / restaurant, and the first Tuesday is the BIM peer group for Austin, and the second Tuesday is the Revit users group for Austin. So.
Yeah, and we also try to have the meeting for the Alamo area the first Wednesday of every month, which didn't happen last meeting, but we're still gonna continue that path, trying to continue that path. And then the next meeting for the Houston area on August 20. If anybody happens to be in the area, you're welcome to go. For Dallas-Fort Worth area has their intent to create and continue the group. It's still not quite organized yet. For our presentations, we try to keep a track of on the agenda for the latest presentations we have had. The actual one that we're having the day of the meeting, and in advance as well. So today we're having the cloud computer meeting with Darrell, and for next month we're trying to get Will Eichert to speak for the level of development, and November is still open to.
For those of you that, I'm sure LOD is probably something that most people are familiar with, but Will Eichert is actually working for both the AIA and the AGC on revising the LOD specification on something that the AIA and the AGC agree on together, and it's a very sort of visual interpretation that shows you what LOD 100, 200, and the 50s in between actually mean, and what that's intended to be used, the intended model uses for that level of development. So it'd be a really good conversation, one that's pertinent for everybody to understand.
This is the work being done out of the BIM form.
Correct. Exactly right. So we're going to try to get him down here to speak. We may have to adjust the meeting time to his schedule, but I think that'd be a really pertinent one, since that would be a good conversation this coming year.
We have seen that presentation, and it's well worth attending.
We also try to open the conversation for any upcoming events related to BIM or technology, any presentations that vendors are having, or any other meetings related to BIM. So far, I got a flyer from yesterday. And Lindsay, can you? I forgot the name of VCCAD previously.
Inception.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't just roll off the tongue, does it?
Yeah, it changes the name. They had
it's just a rebranding, right? They're still DCCAD it's the same company, same ownership, same management, everything else. They just did a rebranding to kind of get CAD out of their name. So yeah, it's just inception.
They've
now.
been talking about it for 2 years. So.
Yeah. I'm gonna struggle with it for probably the next 10 years, but there'll always be DC CAD to me. But
Right. So yesterday was a presentation for BIM in healthcare that
Chuck.
sorry.
No problem.
Chuck was the presenter. And I got a flyer for today. It's AIA Summer Product Expo from 5 to 8 is free for everybody on the Center of Architecture at the Purbury if y'all want to go. I don't know if anybody has anything else.
Yeah, there's also one on a national level for the AGC. They're going to have the BIM Forum is having their one of their conferences in Denver in October. I believe it's 8th and 9th. I'll be attending that. It's basically about modular and prefabrication, so it's going to be highly geared towards GCs and MEP, fire protection subcontractors, steel fabricators. So anybody in that world, I highly recommend attending. Even those in the design world, being able to understand that we're trying to get it straight from design to fabrication at the end of the day. So, it basically, involve everybody at the table there. So, and each BIM forum I've been to has been really great. The quality of the presentations are awesome, and the case studies are really informative. So I recommend that. You get your plus an excuse to go to Colorado. Who doesn't want to see the heat, right?
Right. And before our guest speakers present his cloud computer information, we asked the construction department to give us an update how they're doing it.
Thank you. Shameless plug time. Well, I hope you guys are doing. Welcome to UTSA Downtown Campus. And welcome to Department of Construction Science. My name is Yilmaz Karsulu. Everybody calls me Dr. K. Let me make that easy for you. I'm going to give you very little information about our program. The first piece is actually you're in a unique place. I'll tell you why. This program officially started in 2008 fall. And until 2009 summer, we actually did not have any faculty, did not have any students. That's when they hired me to build the program. Within about a year, we hit 212 students. Our plan was to stop at 200, so we hit the brakes really hard, and we stopped at 200. This is an enrollment control program. We do double elimination to bring students into our program, and so far, we have actually graduated about 83 students, 97% employment rate. We got one student trying to go to law school, one student looking at graduate school, and one waiting for the military service. So we're pretty close to 100%. And Yamel's actually number 47 on that list. She's one of our graduates. But there are a couple of things that we do a little bit different than other construction schools in the U.S. I actually handed out a new plan for us. And this is kind of unique for U.S. We are an ACCE program, that's American Council for Construction Education. Things that we can do are very limited because we do have to comply with our accreditation rules. What that means is we eliminate all the electives. We tell the students what to take. 120 credit hours, basically. But here's the unique thing about our new plan. This is going to kick in fall of 2014. We actually have 3 BIM-based classes required for every single student going through our program. The idea is once we get them into our program at the end of their first year, we are going to teach a class called Technical Communication, which used to be the old drawing class. They are still going to do hand drawing, but the second half of that class is actually computer lab, meaning we are going to introduce the technology. From that particular class, they are going to go into Dr. Lee's class, that's BIM applications, construction managers. Following that, we actually create a unique class that combines MEP with the BIM applications. We're actually bringing in a new faculty member in about a month from Boston with electrical engineering background. So the idea is to teach them the building systems at the same time, show them how the technology part of it is applied. And after that, they basically go out, do their internship, come back. We put them in a capstone class, and they graduate. That's kind of the plan. This is a little bit unique because what we would like to do, and it is very difficult to do this in other programs, for the first 3 semesters that they have, we are going to do this very old school. Our first construction documents class, our estimating class is old school. lay out your plans, grab a highlighter, let's go through the quantity takeoff, understand how a building comes together. After that, you basically flip the switch, everything goes digital. In this particular program, we do have an estimating class that does on-screen takeoff quick with an estimated 3 different software packages. We do have a scheduling class that goes through Microsoft Project and P6. So at the end, the plan is to cover about 9 software packages by the time they graduate. Now, our expectation is not that every student is going to be a BIM expert. That's not our intention. But every construction manager, in our opinion at least, needs to be conversant in this language. It is coming. We cannot stop this. So we might as well prepare for this one. Of course, there are going to be some unique, talented students, just like Mr. Ibanez. He is going to take the role of that BIM portion for your companies. So, again, thanks for coming. We're very happy to have you here. I have some business cards at the front desk. So if you need some more information, any comments, questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So we can continue with Daryl Smith and
Sure. So, my name's Daryl Smith. Coincidentally, I used to work for UTSA. But I'm an architect by trade, actually. And I hate PowerPoint, so I'm going to try and do this standing. Do we want to turn off the light? Or? Do you want me to? Yeah, it's a little easier to read. Or maybe partially. Is it possible? Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So I'm going to just kind of breeze through this. Right? I am a licensed architect, but I've been teaching Revit for the past 8+ years. And Navisworks to architects, engineers, contractors, interior designers, manufacturers, you name it. I'm also, in addition to having been doing that for the past 8 years, I've also teamed up with 3 other companies. One is a program called Assemble, which ties into Revit and does cost management over the course of the project. So you can do it from very early in the design throughout to the end of construction. And I think you guys are using it, right? We've tried it. Okay. And there's benefits for comparing the design as the process goes. The second one that I've teamed up with is a program called Lumion. I'm actually the first reseller for that in the United States. But that is a rendering and animation software and takes the Revit model straight into rendering and animation. And in about an hour, you have a video, high definition video of your model. It's really, really pretty stellar stuff. And then the last one that I've teamed up with is Advanced 2000. They do cloud computing. They're based out of Buffalo, New York. I'm going to do a little bit of a plug of them, but most of this talk is general conversational about the different types of cloud that are available. The one that I'm going to show you is their cloud. So, but as far as what's available, there's a bunch of different things available. So, that slide was not appropriate. I gave this speech at CEFPI a month or so ago, so that's for them. So we're going to talk about how the cloud is different, the different types of cloud that are available. We'll talk about cloud storage versus cloud computing. Very different concepts. Most of us, when we think of cloud computing, we're actually incorrectly really thinking about cloud storage. So it's not just data storage, it's actually running your programs in the cloud. So if you use the internet, though, you're actually doing that now. So technically, all of us have done it at some point or another. But let's take it to the next step, is the idea. So the idea of a collaboration hub. So a collaboration hub is where you have several companies that instead of each having their own private cloud or each having their own private network, they actually connect through one source and share data. And so that way, it doesn't mean that you have to have real-time updates all the time. That can be counterproductive. However, anytime you need an update, you just get it. You don't have to call somebody and say, hey, Mr. Architect, I need an update on your model. You just go get it. So And it's not a PDF, it's the model, the actual model that you're working on. So that's the idea of a collaboration hub. And you're not limited to models, you're not limited to any software. It's whatever software you're using. And then understanding cloud computing and how it transforms the way that we do business today. It's very, very striking how it affects our processes. So industries, we're going to talk about the industries that are appropriate for cloud computing. It's actually pretty diverse. We've got clients with Advanced 2000 that are all over the board. We'll talk about the technical needs that are available through cloud computing, the different challenges that we face as an industry in general, and then how the 4 different types of clouds address those issues. Industry trends, we'll talk about those and how cloud computing fits very nicely into that picture, as well as advantages offered to businesses moving into the cloud. And then finally, we'll talk about the technical capabilities and what the limitations are. It's not a perfect picture. It's not exactly what you dreamed it would be, but in some ways, it's much more. So, we'll talk about those issues as well. So, a lot of people, when they talk about the cloud, they have this preconceived notion of what it is, and this is, you guys have probably all seen this image, but it's just kind of a funny image. I honestly think a contractor he was drilling a hole, or not drilling a hole, he wanted a bigger hole, and he just used a tool to create it. But it's kind of funny, thinking that they might have misinterpreted the cloud on your drawings as a hole in the floor, right? And that's how to draw the hole, right? So what is the cloud? You are in the cloud right now all the time. Google has their own public cloud that you can run Google Docs and their software. Autodesk has their own cloud, and you can run specific software applications in their cloud. Apple, iTunes, I'm on iTunes all the time, and I have different things that I get out of them. So a lot of us, through various sources, are in the cloud. The internet is the cloud. Okay? If you're on the internet, if you use Microsoft Exchange for your email, that's cloud computing, technically, right? So now it's really taking advantage of, and I just misstated that actually, it's cloud storage. So email in the cloud is storing your email, and then your program is actually on your computer or your device and accessing that data, right? So that's cloud storage, it's not cloud computing. Cloud computing would be like Yahoo Mail. So if you use Yahoo Mail or Google Mail, and you go onto a website and you access your email there, that's cloud computing. All the power is on the other end. So what factors drive people to the cloud itself? It's kind of a small slide, isn't it? So cost, you'd think, would be a major reason. The actual biggest reason, I never remember the word that they use. It's speed of working is really what it comes down to. It's the agility and ability to move quickly and access data fast. So I don't know how many of you guys have a smartphone. I assume you all do, frankly. It's kind of become the norm. But I could not survive, function without my phone. If I forget it at home, I have to go back. Because I get emails constantly, I have to respond. I get phone calls. That's actually the least important factor of my phone. And so having that connectability, having the internet and my access on my phone is really important. We'll take that one step further, and now your whole computer, everything that you currently run on your computer is accessible wherever you are. I can literally get on my computer on my phone. Great. I mean, it's a small little screen, but I can do it. And I can do the functions I would do on my computer, on my phone. So that accessibility is the big one. There's a little, I don't have a pointer, but see the darker blue on the far right side, and then just to the left on the bottom of that is a lighter blue, slightly lighter blue. That's representative of the teams of firms that are switching to the cloud because they want to collaborate with other firms. They don't want to only have an intranet within their firm. They want to have a network of companies they work with that all can share data on the fly. And so that I think is a misleading piece of the pie. It's probably the most important piece of the pie because that's what I'm seeing is driving people today towards the cloud. So there's 4 different types of cloud. There's distributed cloud. That's where you have you probably have that now. You have a server in your office, or if you have multiple offices, each office has a server that stores your data. You might be able to access that data from different offices through VPN or some kind of private network that you set up internally. Even when you're out of the office and you have your laptop with you, you can VPN into your office network and be able to work that way. That's a distributed system, and the problem with that system in general is that you are constantly having to transfer data back and forth from one office to another, or from one location to another, or from one computer to another, as opposed to having it all in one central location where you can access it. So that's a distributed cloud. The second one is a public cloud. These are really common. A lot of those are pictured up in that cloud up in the upper left there. So I mentioned Google and Autodesk and Apple and some other ones. They all have very dedicated services that they offer, and they do them very well. There's no question about it. However, I can't run Word on Google's cloud, or I can't run Word on Autodesk cloud. I can't run Revit on Google's cloud. It doesn't work that way. It's very limited in the number of applications. And if you don't use their application, you have to go to another public cloud to use their application, right? So even with those public clouds, if you're trying to share data from one cloud to another, you're having to transfer data back and forth. And so that can be problematic. The third one is a private cloud. This is where you take the time and money and you invest in your own cloud for your company. Now, there's some huge advantages to that because it allows you to put whatever programs you want on your software or on your computers. The disadvantage, though, is that you don't have that connectivity that you might have in Google's cloud or in Autodesk cloud, right? So you can't connect with other members on your team without having to do the same thing you have to do with a distributed where you're sending files back and forth. And so there's some problems with that. The last one is a private hosted cloud. It's the same thing as a private cloud. The difference is it's all in one place. So you have all of your members on your team can join one network. It also takes the expense of IT out of your hands and puts it in the hands of the service that you're buying into. Literally for the cost, a little bit more than what I pay for my cell phone, I can have a supercomputer on the other end in the cloud. And I can access it from any machine. I can access it from your iPad, from my phone, from whatever. Right? So pretty amazing stuff. So some differences kind of describing those 4 things. So let's talk about each of the items here. Agility, that's the ability to not only add new computers, but the ability to move around and access that data from various locations. You know, they marked out distributed in this slide. You can access your data from distant locations, but it is difficult. I mean, you have to have passwords and everything set up. If I want to get on your computer and access my computer at the office, I have to know some very specific ways to do that. And I have to, usually it's a pretty complex process to do that. And I usually internally have to gain access from that same system. So I can't do it remotely at the last minute, usually. Data protection. I actually worked at 2 architecture firms. Unfortunately, this is back when we were using AutoCAD. And most firms have a server for their primary server, and they have an identical server for their backup server. And unless you have an IT person that is checking that on a regular basis, the odds are literally 50-50 that the backup server will fail before the primary server. And it happened to 2 firms I worked at, and they didn't know it. They didn't check their backups, and when their primary server failed, we lost everything. That's crazy. I even warned the second firm about it after it happened with the first one. But luckily for us, we had just sent our files to someone else that we were working on at the time, so we were able to recover it in that particular example. But that data protection may or may not be there. Most public clouds do not back up your data so that you can recover it in the same way. And I don't know about Autodesk. I don't know if you guys do or not.
We're hosted on Amazon Cloud.
Okay, so most cloud services, if it's a public cloud, if your data is corrupted for any reason, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever they have. They don't have backups. Most. Now, some do. So, and I just don't know. I don't know about Amazon. I don't know if they do or not. It's not that they couldn't do it.
We actually just published a white paper on data security and redundancy on the Amazon clouds.
Okay.
Came out last week.
There you go. Well, then you guys might be ahead of most. So that's an issue. Whereas with private and hosted private, you generally have that redundancy there. For security and privacy, I disagree with this slide or this item. Public cloud, I think, is very secure. The problem is they get bombarded by more attacks than other places because they're a big target. And so, depending on what it is that you're talking about, if they're hosting a database of information, all they have to do is get into one file and they got the whole database. But if they're hosting your files, because you're working on several things, you're not going to be a target for that sort of thing. So, but the security, I think public cloud is actually stronger than distributed. If I go into your office and act like it belonged there, I could probably walk up to your server, stick in a flash drive, and make copies of files pretty quickly. Most firms could do that. And so, I mean, but if you go to a public cloud, I can't physically go into the cloud and do that. I'd have to actually access it from the web, and then you got to be a pretty good hacker to get into a lot of their systems because they are pretty good about that stuff. However, with distributed, like I kind of alluded to, there's a false impression that we are extremely secure. We seem to, I don't know what it is, we think that we are more secure than anybody else because we host our data. It's protected because we have it. And so it's kind of interesting that we have this false sense of security when, in general, 99% of the hacking that goes on, by the way, is from us. It's from a previous employee or a current employee that accidentally or unknowingly, usually, gave away a password or gave away some kind of breach into your system through either clicking on links in emails or things like that. So that's actually the biggest number one security breach that people have to worry about. Collaboration. We talked about distributed. The issue with distributed cloud is you're constantly having to transfer files back and forth, and it's a huge waste of time. With a public cloud, everything's shared. It's all in one location, and you can share it between multiple users depending on their access. Right? Same thing with private and hosted private. Data integration. One of the issues with distributed is kind of going back to having to have standards in every office. I mean, how many firms here have multiple offices? I'm just curious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I mean, so the issue of within your office, having standards that are available. Do you have them all in one location, or do you actually have standards at each office? Some offices I go and I do consulting for, each architect or each project leader has their own standards. That's a nightmare. But having that data integration, having one place to store everything, is pretty useful. Scalability, they're all scalable. I mean, you can add or subtract. The difference is the cost. So when I say scalability, I mean, can I add a new computer to a system? Can I increase the speed or performance of a computer? They can all do that. It's not whether you can or not, it's how fast you can do it. If you have to buy a new computer for a new employee, what's the lag time on that? Do I have to order a computer? That's a month. Then I have to install all the software and set up all the security policies and all that stuff. How long does that take? Some firms it's pretty quick, a couple days. Some firms it's a month or two. And so it's not to say you can't do it, it's just how fast. The total cost of operation, though, a distributed system is actually the most expensive system out of all of them, by far. Public is actually the cheapest. And then private is cheaper than distributed, but it's still pretty expensive. And then hosted private is even less than that. Usually about, depending on the size of your organization, you oftentimes will see about 30% to 60% reduction in costs of operation. So,
can you please plug that in? Plug that.
You know what? I don't. I'm not sure. Yeah. What is this? This is just a pointer, though, right?
Yes. It can also turn the.
You know what?
Okay.
I'm okay with it. Okay. So, so with private hosting, the idea is that you have these areas for each company. They're all hosted in one. Think of it like one building, and you have different floors, and each floor is dedicated to a particular company. Now, the access from floor to floor is not there unless you provide it. Unless you say, yes, that's something that we want to specifically provide. But in general, you can isolate that. But think about it in terms of a building. Is it cheaper to build 10 5-story buildings or one 30-story building? I don't know. You know, that's kind of the analogy. And so when it comes to cloud computing, though, there's definitely some cost savings there. But it's not just computers. It could be your phones. How many of you guys use voice over IP? Several? Okay. I'll tell you what, if you are using if you're not using voice over IP, that's a huge expense. That's crazy how much you're paying 10 times what you need to pay for that as if you did voice over IP. And voice over IP, I can access it from any phone. I can get my messages from any phone. If my power goes down with voice over IP, I can actually, I'm not down. My power might be down, but my phone is still taking messages. And so I can access it from a different phone. That's fine. So that's just an example. But servers, desktop, voice, storage data, all that stuff, it's all provided by a hosted cloud. So you get tremendous time savings being able to access your data from the fly. You're getting that flexibility to access it from any location. I mean, I'm an architect, so put that in perspective. Don't hate me if you guys are contractors. But I can't tell you how many times I used to have to print out a set of drawings. I'd go to the job site only to find out I either printed the wrong set of drawings, or maybe I didn't even print the drawings, and I get there expecting the drawings to be up to date, and they've got an old copy. And so then my trip is wasted, or I have to call somebody, have it faxed over, or whatever it is, I have to waste time doing that. As opposed to, I can actually not have to print anything out, so I save on the paper, but I can actually walk out with my iPad, access the drawings, and hop around the actual Revit model or Navisworks model or whatever it is I'm using in the cloud from the job site. And it's real time, it's up to date, it's accurate. Scalability, you can increase the power of your computer in an hour or two. If you decide, this 4 gigabyte RAM computer is dying, you can actually call up and say, hey, I want a 32 gigabyte RAM computer. And instead of having to reinstall anything or go back and reconfigure your computer because you've added new computing power, it's literally just a flip of a switch. And you've got more power. So that scalability. Also, if you have a new employee, since it's a virtual computer, we can set up a template, and you can take that template, copy it, and boom, you've got a new computer set up. And all they got to do is they have to have an access device, but it could be, a dumb terminal. So it's always on 24/7. We have this is kind of specific to Advanced 2000. So we have 24/7 staff. If you have a technical problem on Saturday night at 2 in the morning, you can literally call us and we'll go fix it. It's one of those things. Whereas if you're in your office and you're working on a deadline, is your IT guy going to be there at 2 in the morning on Saturday? Probably not. Hopefully not. But But you would, at the same time, you'd hope you'd have that support. We talked about the access from any device. You're not limited to a particular brand or a particular device. It can be a phone, it can be an iPad, which is becoming very common, or a tablet, or a laptop. If you need a keyboard, and you can have a dinker dumb laptop that you actually take out to the job site and can access your computer full on with a mouse and everything. And then the reliability, fewer hardware concerns. Servers like to be in a data center. They're cool temperatures, they're conditioned, they have good airflow. They're not stuck in a corner with 20 books stored, shoved up against them, and with dust collector. I can't tell you how many times I go into firms and that's what I see in their server room. It's just one of those things where hardware goes out. And so do you want to have to go pay for a $10,000 server every time, every 5 to 7 years as that goes out? Or do you just want to know that it just works and it just runs? And so less concerned. So what's this big push? I mean, the cloud's kind of become this term, and I actually, in some ways, don't like the term the cloud because of the misunderstanding of it. Because it's been around for years. This is not new technology. But why is there this big push towards cloud computing now as opposed to years past? Some of the protocols like VMware, Citrix, Hyper-V, and the virtualization of computers. I have a virtual machine on my computer as an example, but having virtual computers that work with licensing, work with just the way the program itself works, is that technology has gotten better and better and better. VMware and Citrix were kind of the big dogs on the block for a long time, and Hyper-V, which is Microsoft's version of that, they kind of were pulling up the tail. I will tell you they've caught up. We saw a presentation on their new 2012 line, 2013 line, whatever, and it was pretty impressive, pretty amazing what they have, the leaps and bounds that they've done in the last year. But that technology in general just got faster. So it's more effective. It's not not getting that resistance that you got in the past. Data circuits are getting faster and cheaper. I'm kind of spoiled in Austin. We're about to get Google is about to invest a ton of money in fiber optic cabling throughout the entire city. We're going to be the first city to have all of that. So we're a little spoiled, but it's becoming much cheaper to get a circuit that is capable of running the quantities of data that you need to be able to do cloud computing. So I'll give you an example, and I apologize if you guys are stuck in this contract right now. There's a lot of firms to this day that pay about $300-400 for a T1 line, which is about 1.5 megs of data up and down. I get 5 to 10 megs up and 50 down for $50 a month. So just to give you an idea, depending on your contract and where you are, things have changed. And data transfer, the cost of bandwidth has gotten much cheaper. So because of that, you can afford to install bigger, thicker lines that can carry a lot of this data that we need. And the infrastructure is there. So even if you're not at a place that has that set up, you can usually get on pretty easily and access that kind of bandwidth that is necessary to make this work. Public versus private clouds. There's so many public clouds out there, and they're all pretty phenomenal what they offer. Private clouds are kind of a newer phenomenon, but you're starting to see that pop up. Just to give you one other, I don't want to totally bang you over the head with Advanced 2000, but BIM 9 is another option. They're if you are wanting to do a private cloud yourself, BIM 9 is a great way to do that. They're a great company to look into. They actually are not a competitor to Advanced 2000 because they do private clouds yourself, whereas Advanced 2000 is hosted. It's the big difference between the two. But I'm seeing a lot more of those. I've had a lot of clients that are jumping. And then just the whole evolution of our industry, the AEC industry in general. It wasn't that long ago we were all pushing paper. technically, in some ways, we still are pushing paper. But doing paper and CAD, going to spreadsheets, 3D visualization has been around for a while, but I'd say it's really boomed in the last couple of years. I don't know if you guys have seen that or noticed that, but I'm seeing more and more presentations that are pretty phenomenal video and just imagery. And then the enhanced project management. I mean, I think you were just talking about facilities management, Luis, earlier today, and that's becoming more important to owners to have that connectivity, to be able to work and see what you're working on as you're doing it, not have that disconnect, and really taking the project from conception through facilities management. So you're not really tied to the AEC industry. This is not specific by any means to the AEC industry. I know Advanced 2000, we have healthcare clients. So you think about security like HIPAA. We're actually working on getting HIPAA certified, so our clients don't even have to be certified. But we actually are compliant already. And so we have a lot of healthcare clients. Government agencies, we have several police departments in our cloud. They got to keep their documentation pretty secure. The education we were talking about here. So what's the thought of having maybe a student have their own virtual machine that's connected to everybody at the facility at your school, and being able to share or work on the same project from home or from school or from the classroom or from wherever. Pretty phenomenal what it could do for education. Legal. I have several lawyers that they need to access their computer while they're in court. That's kind of interesting in itself. And then manufacturing and AEC. So AEC specifically, I think, benefits more than most because of programs like Revit. The idea of having to work from multiple offices on a project, how that interacts, and I've got a slide that I'm going to show you later on the different ways you can do that. Cloud computing really kind of tackles that problem head on. So, but some of the things that it also addresses, just that business continuity, having the ability to add and subtract, computers or employees, or power up your computers as you need to, without having to completely rewrite or reconstruct what's going on. The integrated communications with your phones, your computers, etc. Middleware services is the VMware and Citrix. That's just the power behind that, those programs. But the maintenance and technical support, one of the big pushes to go into cloud computing is for years we've had to be our own IT expert. If you're in a small firm and you 5 people, there's usually one person that's kind of the IT guy, and they weren't really supposed to be the IT guy. But they had to learn it. They had to figure it out, and they're not an expert at it, but they do their best, right? Or maybe you pay for a consultant to come in a couple hours and work on whatever's going on. But we have to kind of accommodate that need, when in reality, what we should be doing is paying an expert to maintain that on a regular basis and take care of those types of issues on a regular basis. So cloud storage, I mentioned that, just being able to store your data in the cloud and access it, but also actually do the processing. Run your renderings or run your analysis or access the model that everybody's working on from New York, LA, wherever you're working. Austin, San Antonio. So specific to our industries, what impact would real-time collaboration have for you guys? Would access from any device anytime? I mean, we've been working on that. Bluebeam, some of these other software solutions. Having that access is critical. And a lot of times, what we have to do is we have to process the data from a source file and create a PDF or create some other kind of way to read that file. But it's because we had to process it, it's no longer up to date because somebody else might have been making changes on the original while I'm looking at the PDF. as opposed to actually looking at the original, seeing what's going on, and being able to change that. Time transferring data. I mean, I teach Revit, and there's a process to clean up a linked file that you have to go through every time a consultant sends you a new file. Wouldn't it be nice to just link to the original? And when you want the latest, greatest, you just say, hey, update it. You know, and not have to call them up and wait and them say, oh, well, we're not quite ready to give it to you yet. Well, you know, it'd be nice to be able to not have to wait for, and usually it's not that they don't have time to give it to you, or I'm sorry, that they don't, it's not that they don't want to give it to you, it's that it takes them processing time to give it to you. They have to upload it, or they have to do something, and that has to stop whatever their process is. So it not only affects you, but it affects them, and so having that immediate access is really huge. You know, how long does it take your firm to add a person to your project team? Wouldn't it be nice if you hired somebody today, if you could have them up on a computer tomorrow? You know, if you have data backups every night, you guys have if you're a small firm, having a person perform that, and not necessarily perform the data backups. You know, you can do automated software that will do a lot of that, but check it, verify. Make sure that you have the latest, greatest protocols for your Windows operating system, your latest, greatest protocols for or updates for your software. So most software you get updates every 2, 3, 4 months sometimes more often than that. And so having somebody that's there to kind of take care of those issues for you in the background is nice. Present plan in case of a disaster. So the Northeast has had 2 major events of late that I can attest to. And I say of late in the last 10 years. So one was the blackout. I don't know if you guys remember that about 10 years ago. That blackout that just totally wiped out the northeast corner of the U.S. And there's some photos of it if you go online. It's just a big black hole. And it was caused, I think it was caused by like a solar flare or something that surged the power company, and it just trickled through our system. We were, due to Advanced 2000's backup systems, our clients were actually up and running that whole time. But there were other places that didn't have power, didn't have connection. So most of the, you know, if you didn't have some kind of generator for your office, you were dead in the water, right? So having that power backup in case of that kind of emergency. A second event was Sandy. We actually had clients on the coast that had offices that their office was wiped from the face of the earth, and they were actually, I don't know what this is kind of a weird statement. They were actually in their hotel working the next day. Now, they probably should have been doing other things, like taking care of their lives and things like that. But they actually could work on their data on the fly, even in an event as bad as that. And so, you know, what would happen to you guys if you lost power? What would happen to you if you lost your server? You know, what's your plan? So, cost of IT, hardware investments, you feel like you're in the IT business. That's really true. I mean, back in the early 1900s, if you wanted to start a business, you had to worry about how to power your business. You know, do you set up windmills or water mills to power the equipment to manufacture and create or run your systems? That was forefront. Then along came the power companies that went through and slowly started to take on that task. And if you think about it, I mean, back then is very similar to where we are today with cloud computing. So back then, you had companies that had invested all this money in how to power their company. They put tons of dollars into the windmills and whatever source of energy that they needed to provide to power their company. And so, you know, a lot of the steel mills were against the river because of that. They had to have access to some way to power their industry. Well, now, if I want to start a new business, do I go out and invest in generators and invest in transformers and all the the electrical systems that are necessary to power my company, or do I just call the electric company? It's kind of a no-brainer now, right? So, but back then it wasn't, and so but it's funny in hindsight when you look back at, and so what we're trying to do is convert the cost of IT from a capital expenditure that you are spending, so many dollars every several years, to having a rental program, basically where you rent that IT service or that capability at a cost.
Daryl, related to that, you want to ask your question? Essentially what we're talking about is virtualization of computers right now. This has come up most of the time in the conversation.
Sure.
Are you seeing, I'm sure you've got to help some firms along with making the decision of where cost-benefit analysis, or where's the break-even point from the status quo versus moving to virtualization. Are you seeing what size of firm would benefit? I mean, is it just a small shop, the medium-sized shop, the large shop?
Sure.
Do they all?
I'm going to show a slide that actually has some numbers, but from my experience, just in hard, easily provable data, the cost break-even is about at 5 to 10 people. Anything above that, it's a no-brainer. Actually, when you get above 30 people, you're seeing about 30 or more % drop in your IT expenses. So now, if you're honest, it's not like you're swapping computer for computer. You're taking your IT part of your business and shifting it to a service that provides not only your hardware but your service, your IT service, and you're giving it to experts, basically. So if you're, what's that?
The time that we're required to spend on getting all set up, or is it time included, or just the money?
Well, I was just giving you hard costs. Now, I'll be real honest. I've got 1 and 2 people firms that are looking at it that see the benefit to them in time saving that makes it worth the cost.
Just hard to substantiate it.
Yeah, but I can prove it numbers wise once you get above 5 to 10. So it's hard to prove time.
And I know we're talking a lot about, we're focusing on the pros of all of this.
Sure.
But I'd like to spend some time focusing on the cons. Because I think it's 3 years ago, we strongly considered virtualization of a large portion of our fleet so that we could turn our hardware costs or capital expenditures into known annual expenditures.
Sure.
And some of the things that it just wasn't ready at that particular point in time, or maybe not with the vendor that we were working with to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Latency was one thing.
Sure.
You're fully bandwidth dependent at that point, right? So so long as you got an internet connection, you've got access to all the horsepower in the world, right? But that little bit of latency sometimes matters. In construction, for us specifically, that gets further compounded because we have so many remote sites that bandwidth is a serious issue on project sites for really remote sites. Texas A&M San Antonio, the first building, was a really good example. There was nothing, not even really like reliable 3G service out there that was really great. We had to get them to point some things in our direction down there to establish a connection.
Sure.
So I just kind of want to focus on some of the potential disadvantages.
Well, there's one other thing you have to consider when you think about pipelines. One of the reasons why T1s cost so much is you have a service level agreement with the provider based on 1, 2, or 4 hour turnarounds. If you're down more than 1 hour, it's their responsibility to get you back up. If you have a 50 megabyte pipe with Cox, you can be down for 3 days. There's no service level agreement to bring you back up unless you move into there. So when you look at these pipelines, you have to look at that SLA component, right? What is their responsibility on the other end? I have wonderful internet at my home through AT&T Uverse, but there's no service level agreement. I could be down for days.
Right.
They have no responsibility to bring me back up. So you have to look at that component too, right? You're paying for the reliability and the response on the other end to bring your pipe back up.
Yeah.
That's the big cost in the T1 is the 1 hour service level.
Well,
agreement.
and that was probably a misleading thing because it's not apples to apples, but even apples to apples, you can get far cheaper.
Oh,
than
I
what
agree.
you currently
But
do.
you have to
and
look
you
at
have
the
the service. You have that in place. So.
I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of the folks in here are either in the current capacity to make recommendations to their executive management just by proxy of being the BIM guy.
Right.
They're also sometimes the IT guy or influence that heavily, or soon a lot of these folks will be in that capacity.
Right. Well, there's a slide that goes through pros and cons on a lot of things. But the cons, there's only really two cons to the cloud computing. Actually, three. The first is a perceived security. So I think that some people feel like if they have the data in their office, it's more secure. Real or not, that's a perceived problem. Okay, I can't do anything about a perceived problem. The reality is they're probably not as secure, but that's still a perceived problem. So, and that the second one is the latency. You mentioned the latency. So, if you've ever done remote desktop from your home, and even if your desktop is in the same city as you're in, the latency is a problem. It is chuggy, is the way I would describe it. There are times when you have to push your mouse, hold it there without moving your hand, and then kind of wait for it to register, and then drag and do whatever. I do GoToMeeting all the time, which is a Citrix-based system. There's nothing wrong with Citrix, but based on what the connectivity is with me and the person I'm connecting to, I may see that kind of lag you're talking about, and absolutely that's a problem. We have clients, just this is specific to Advanced 2000. So Advanced 2000 has some technology that I can't disclose, I don't even understand it all, frankly, that takes care of a lot of that, if not all of it. So I'm going to show you the experience here at the very end so you can see it. But the computer I'm connecting to is in Buffalo. It's not even in Austin. Okay, so we have clients that are in California, Alaska, Central America. Now you can't do it to like Australia. It's just the distance gets too far and it's a little bit chuggy. And to be in all full disclosure, the Alaska clients, it's still a little bit chuggy compared to, it's kind of what you'd experience normally in a remote desktop situation, working from home to your office. But the benefit to that particular company outweighed that. And that's just something you personally have to judge. And then the third one is the cost. And the cost for small firms, it's not there. I mean, it is more expensive. But if you're comparing what you get for what you currently have, is it more expensive? And that's again a judgment call on your part. I think the biggest obstacle though really is perception. It's kind of like Revit 6-7 years ago. I mean, I taught it 6-7 years ago. I used it professionally 6-7 years ago. And I was completely able to do what I needed to do to get the job done. Now, the program has gotten phenomenally better over the past few years. But the point is, I was able to do the job effectively without really too many qualms, even then. That's kind of where it is with cloud computing. You're able to do it. It's just the perception 8 years ago, 7 years ago for Revit was, it's untested. I'm not sure if that's the way things are going to go. And so there's this kind of wait and see attitude. And so that's what I'm seeing. Those are the negatives. The positives are the things that I'm listing out. Yes, sir.
Well, we just going along with what Lewis is saying is one of our issues is time is money out in the field. If we're out in the field and we don't have a paper document and I don't have connectivity, if I'm out there in the field with the guy, we're losing money, we're losing schedule.
That's right.
So that not only is latency a problem, but especially in a construction environment, you don't always have, you're not guaranteed connectivity all the time, no matter what you're doing. That's what I would be worried about in the sense that if I have it, something that's on my computer here, and I can save the files locally, at least a copy, I can continue to work and keep my guys working.
Right.
I don't have access to that.
So what do you currently do? Do you use Bluebeam or use any other?
We use Bluebeam, we use Snap.
Okay, so what happens when Bluebeam is down in the field?
And Bluebeam is down.
I mean, what happens if your iPad goes south or your internet goes down?
Well, the hope is I have a backup and I can go out to Best Buy, I can buy a computer and read those things, right?
That's right.
But I can't, not sure, I guarantee that I can get connected back up to the cloud.
But here's the thing, is that if you can't get connected, there are devices that connect through your phone, through Wi-Fi. So if your Wi-Fi is down, you can still connect to your phone.
Well, in a construction environment, sometimes that's not always the case. We've had several we've had right in a downtown setting, we've had it where we can't get internet connection. No matter what we're doing.
It's usually because of the structure of the building that you're in, and so it's just providing Wi-Fi that.
And I'm not downing it. I'm just saying that
No,
it's
a real,
challenges.
it's a real.
And it's a tangent, but it's related. So
But
BIM
it's-
360 Field is a good example of where that specific problem has actually been dealt with, at least in some form. So you can actually work with it offline. So it caches information on your device, right? So whether it be
And-
strands, whether it be issues that you're creating,
And that's still
things like
possible.
that, it
So,
goes back to the
as an
server.
example, if you have certain files that you need that day, from your cloud computer, you can put it on, I don't know, is it Box?
Dropbox.
Dropbox. You put it on Dropbox,
Sure.
and you have the file on your computer. So, it's just now you have to have a computer with you. But it's still an access device.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it's down for some reason, as long as it's in Dropbox, you can access it either way. Right? But then it's not the live version. So you lose that liveness of it. But you lose that anyway. Right? And that's current. You're losing that anyway. So, what we're seeing is contractors are setting up Wi-Fi right when they get there themselves, or they have some kind of connectivity, and sometimes they do 2 or 3 to prevent some of that. And they run it through different services. They include it in the cost of the job, so that's just part of the cost of building the building. And then they leave that service to the owners of the building when they're done. So I don't know. It's a real problem. I'm not trying to skip by it, but it's. But I think that there are definite ways to get around it, and it's just how creative you want to be, and how necessary it is to have those backups and how you provide them. But they're available. It's not a matter of this stuff.
Do you mind if I throw my specific problem at you?
Sure,
And maybe
sure.
this would be a good example for us to talk about, because I bet a lot of people are in this situation. So I'm trying to balance, I think, several different things as it relates to the cloud. One of them is just the hardware component to it, right? We're getting a lot more BIM-enabled folks, not just the BIM people in the office. Now there's a number of them out in the field, and that number is only going to continue to get larger.
That's right.
And we're having to invest in beefier laptops for those guys so that they don't experience any problems out there, and they're not having any technical issues. They can actually just troubleshoot what they need to troubleshoot out in the field. Right. So it'd be nice to be able to virtualize. So that's one aspect of it. It's just controlling that capital expenditure cost. The other aspect of it is the true file sharing and collaboration, and there's 2 components to that. There's internal file sharing, which we'll most likely have a SharePoint solution for here pretty soon, and that's where we're working on documents live together internally, whether it be RFP responses, whether it be estimates, whether it be model collaboration, whatever it is. And we've got the external collaboration component where we're working with architects, engineers, subcontractors on a constant basis, utilizing mostly FTP sets most of the time to share models on a weekly basis. Right? And then we've got the field component to this whole thing. Everybody wants to be able to access this from any type of device, namely iPads right now. But and trying to figure out how to navigate this whole cloud strategy and contain costs. There's no one silver bullet, we know that, but there's overlapping capabilities within each of the 3 things I just mentioned. And I guess I just want to put out our current situation out there and see how maybe you would respond to that.
Let's address them one by one. So the cost of hardware would be, as you alluded to, drastically reduced, because instead of having to buy a $3,000 laptop, I can buy a $400 laptop that is just a connection point. Has a keyboard, has a screen, I can connect a mouse to it, but that's it. There's nothing really physically there. Now you could have a dinker. You could have just an old laptop that you've been using that you had to throw away, or would have had to throw away in the past. You can actually keep using it and run through that. It's just a portal. That's it. So if you can get on the internet, you can get to your computer, right? So the costs are drastically reduced from the hardware side. Same thing with servers. You don't have to keep up your servers. You don't have to worry about backup servers because it's all part of the system. You don't have to worry about, other than your internet connection, you get the internet, to go set up a new office, I set up my internet, I plug in my laptop, I'm up. Everything that was already set up, it's there, it's done. So from a cost standpoint, that's where a lot of the savings are, is in the hardware. As far as the connectivity from, paying for these supercomputers can be extremely expensive, and it's a regular basis every 2-3 years. Sometimes you get away with 4 or 5, but that's getting harder and harder. And so the ability to keep up with the software demands of because software is always going to push the limits of the hardware. So if you can download a new software one day, realize, my computer can't handle it, and call up and the next day have the computer you need running without having to reinstall anything and keep going. That's huge. So and the difference in your bill might be $10 a month. So because you're having to pay for a little bit more powerful machine. But other than that, it's not, the costs are not there to upgrade on whatever basis or downgrade. Maybe you've got somebody who has too powerful a machine, they don't need it. They're just doing Word and simple processing. You can get a pretty cheap machine. So you can up or down depending on what's going on. And there was a third part to you.
Yeah, the SharePoint or the SharePoint solution.
Well, SharePoint, you can still access it, right? I mean, it's the same. It's exactly the same. So you're just, everything that you currently do on your one server now is the same. The only difference is, now some programs require different licensing. I know for Microsoft specifically, you have to have enterprise licensing for your software. Autodesk, you have to have network licensing. And different companies, different divisions have different ways to handle that. But generally, it's not that the program doesn't work. I mean, I can tell you that Autodesk Revit standalone runs in the cloud. It's not that it doesn't work. It's that you're not abiding by the EULA, right? So you need to, obviously comply with the EULA agreements that you've got set up, and just make sure you do your due diligence on that. And make, whatever software you're running, whether it's SharePoint or whatever. But most software applications have a way to do that. They all run on these virtual machine environments. And so, like I said, I have a virtual machine I run on my computer. Other than the fact it's Windows and I don't like Windows, it works just fine. So I haven't had any problems with software running on that environment differently than if I were running on my actual computer. So they've figured a lot of those. That's what I was talking about with the protocols. They figured out a lot of those issues that used to happen. So, is that?
Yeah, I just wanted to put it out there.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Different tools.
To expand a little bit on what Lewis is asking, but from a software side, we have companies that are turning towards subscriptions as opposed to owning the software now.
Sure.
Plus we have licenses, plus we have dongles, plus we have all this stuff. I mean, how do you deal with that?
So a dongle is
where does the software reside?
Software would reside in the cloud, but your dongle could be here locally. So you can have a connection point that has a USB connection or whatever it is you need. You can still do that. But just to dispel one myth, you never really own the software. Ever.
Right.
It's always a licensing to the right to use it.
But a subscription is a total.
And subscription is a little different, yeah. But it's essentially the same thing. It's just now you're paying rent as opposed to feeling like you own it. You're paying a subscription.
But it's never on your computer.
It wouldn't have to be, but it could be. You could put it in both places. I mean, the nice thing about a lot of network licenses is you can install it 20 times. You just can only use it one place at a time. So you could install it on your physical machine that you take with you, but you could also have it on your cloud machine. And then you just can only use one or the other at a time. So there's some huge, that kind of addresses, in a way, your issue that you were talking about before. Because if you are disconnected, you can still, access the file and open it up on your computer if you had to. Now, in that situation, if you had 5 contractors, maybe only one has a computer that can do that on site, but the other 5 have just simple machines that just directly connect. But that kind of handles that fire when that happens briefly, and still keeps your costs down. So,
to respond what Lewis kind of talking about the con side of things, I mean, I got a good example of what we are kind of dealing with at the moment. As far as Revit license, what happens is we are in the middle of the converting all the standalone license to the network licenses in the office, and what happens is the idea is we have more Revit architecture license than the BDSP, the Building Design Suite product, which is the Revit architecture and all the other licenses. And supposedly all the licenses are all in as network. And the problem is you should be able to use either AutoCAD or Revit however you want it, but we can only go so far as much as how many BDSP licenses you own. Right. You have license for.
That's right.
The problem is because we have a mix of the license, they don't work together.
It actually should and does. I mean, I've had clients have that same issue, and
no,
and it's a fixable problem.
No, it's not, because we actually talked to DCCAD, and then
the year versions add the complexity to it. If you're opening one project in 2014 for Navisworks, and then you open up something else in Revit 2013, that's pulling 2 licenses.
That's not just the issues, because the problem is
what you're dealing with is cascading.
Yeah.
Right. No,
will your standalone Revit architecture use up first and then cascade up to pull Revit architecture licenses out of the suites? It's
that's one of the hurdles we have to go through. Another problem that we have is because suppose BDSP is the one box Revit, which has all the flavors of Revit architecture, structure, and MEP. Because we have a mix of license, most users can only get Revit architecture on the machine, even though they are running a network BDSP license.
It's first come, first serve.
No, it's not, because we cannot have 2 favorite of one box and Revit architecture on the same machine, because they will be putting the same license from the same network. In order to get around that solution, they can only have Revit architecture on their machine.
My experience with that has been when you install the Revit, you plug in a serial number at that moment.
No, the serial number was pulling from.
It's pulling from the network line, but you're pulling from where that is. And the idea being that if I, let's say I have architecture, Revit architecture, and I have building design, so we have 2 seats. Mm-hmm. If I fire open Navisworks, I've taken the BSD license, right? But if I fire open Revit, it's supposed to take the lesser of the 2. But if you have weird combinations where there's some overlap and some not overlap, then it gets a little more complex. And I've had firms have your problem. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. I'm saying it's solvable.
We recently went through that as well. I just upgraded everything into the building design suite.
Wow,
and that's
afford that.
So, and the guys at DCCAD, I mean, they know better. I mean, I used to work for them. I'm not a reseller anymore, but I've come across that in the past, and it was a solvable issue. So, unless something's changed in the licensing that I'm not aware of, it should be a solvable problem.
I guess the reason I'm even bringing this up at this point is, I mean, there are technical issues where, besides, whether we choose to go with cloud or not, these are the issues that are presenting from the software side of things right now.
Right.
So that's inevitable.
Yeah, sure. And that's kind of a separate, that's irrelevant to cloud or not.
Yeah, it is, but I mean, I just kind of like throw it out.
But one thing that you
that's
can
exactly
do,
what we're dealing with right now.
One thing that you can do, though, is you can actually install if you have virtualized everything, you could have 2 servers. One server with your license manager for your BSD stuff, and one server with your license manager for your
that's a possibility.
Your Revit architecture stuff, and then you would have to install the program. I don't know if you can install the program twice on a single machine, but you could have machines dedicated to one or the other. and then it may not be tied to a person. I mean, there's some flexibility there.
It could be a number of things.
I
I mean, it
appreciate
could be
it's a
the issue
licensing
date of
file.
the license file,
Yeah.
and we can work with you after.
I bet it's the license file and the install method between the two, making sure that they're
I
pointing.
guess maybe because all the both licenses are already in the same location, this is kind of how we were advised to do that. I mean, I don't
Well, normally that is the way you do it. I'm not. It usually is a solvable, workable thing. It should work. So, I don't know.
But I mean,
like I said, I don't work for them.
I'm
anymore.
merely throwing
You guys
out
probably know
problems.
more about it.
I'll give you a shout after.
So let me get through some of the rest of this real quick here. So, model with clients and consultants. You know, what's the idea of being able to work remotely with your consultants? You know, teaming up on a cloud. So we talked about the converting the capital expenditure into an operational expense. It's like your phone. I mean, like I said, for a little more than the cost of my phone, I can have a full-blown computer that I can access from anywhere. Anytime you have on-demand access to scalable computing, we've talked about a lot of this stuff, so I'm just going to skip over. Times, you talk about time being a huge savings. If you can save 15 minutes, 20 minutes a day for someone you pay $50,000 a year, that's $2,000 a year. It's not quantifiable because you don't realize you're wasting that money, but you will. So this is a typical situation in a distributed situation. You have a server, you have a bunch of computers in one city, Chicago in this example, and then it connects to, say, San Antonio. You only have one line of connection that is like a VPN that you have to set up. Then you add another office. Now instead of just adding one line, you have to add two lines to connect to those other two offices. You add another office, you got 3 lines you have to add. And so every office you have to add one more line of data to be able to connect to that system. But then, what if you're at the job site? What if you're at home? You know, I've got some clients that have literally hundreds of job sites that are working on this, and their network system to connect to the files they need. Some of the files are in Chicago, some are in New York, some are, and knowing where to go for whatever it is that they need is a nightmare. As opposed to, with a hosted solution, you have one location where all your data is stored, and everybody connects to that. Now this, where's that pointer? Okay, well anyway, the top row of computers would actually be on site with the server. And the computers that are down below are in Chicago, right? And same thing in San Antonio. So all the ones in the top row are on site with the server. And same thing with Los Angeles, same thing with your job or your home. So distributed cloud, this is specific to Revit. But in a distributed cloud, some of the issues that come up, you have that lag, and delayed mouse clicks when you do a remote desktop. 2 computers per user. You actually have to buy 2 computers, one at the office and one at home. Now, some people are working from their home computer that's a personal computer, but if you truly want to do this across the board for everybody, you now have to buy 2 computers for every person. Work sets, groups and links. I have some clients that what they'll do is they'll group a portion of the model together. They'll turn it into a linked file, take the linked file and email it or transfer it to somebody else that needs to work in a different city. They'll do their work, send linked updates every once in a while. So that works, but you know the setup time for that and who owns what, it can be tricky, especially if it's not a different discipline. I mean, I have firms that are in the same discipline doing this because they have multiple offices. Over the VPN. So you can actually log in through your computer onto a virtual machine or to another machine over the VPN. But as Luis was mentioned, there's the issues with save times. I have a client that is in New York and St. Louis and Austin, and they were working on a project all together at the same time. And what they did is they would just VPN in and download the file as a local file. Using the central file was in Austin, and they would work, and it generally worked okay. But whenever they would sync, most people don't realize this, but when you synchronize with your central file, you're locking down the central file while it makes those changes. And so nobody can make any changes on the file at that time. If you're all local, it's like 5 seconds and you really don't notice it. It's pretty seamless. But if you're not local, and these guys weren't, when they synced, it was a 10-minute wait, and it kicked pretty much everybody out from working for 10 minutes while that person in the remote location synced. So it's really long save times. And so you're locking people out. And then in their case, the person in New York would sync 10 minutes. The person in St. Louis would sync 10 minutes. And then everybody else would sync 5 seconds. And then the person in New York would have to sync again. And the person in St. Louis would have to sync again. So it was like 40 minutes that they'd waste. And so they had to time it during lunch and after work is when they would sync. It was kind of crazy. So VPN, and by the way, I did not recommend that they did that. That was them trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So Revit Server. Revit Server is fantastic because it's free. However, a lot of firms don't have the hardware to run it. And so they have to invest in a new server to put that operating, that on it. The other thing that's an issue with it is file management. It's one file. So if you have multiple projects running on Revit Server, you can't back it up. You can't do anything with it until everybody's out. And then when they're out of it, if that file for whatever reason goes corrupt or something like that, there's a lot of projects involved with that one file. So it also is not part of the traditional Word or not Windows or whatever operating systems you're using, where you have file hierarchy and you can put your jobs in a specific folder. You can't do that with Revit Server. I mean, it can have folders within Revit Server, but you can't put it in the folder with everything else, your contracts, your Word documents, etc. Public cloud. So the issues with that are the limited apps and programs that the provider provides. And Revit specifically, you can't run in public cloud right now. So but you can upload, and you still have to upload and download files. With the bandwidth getting better, that's not as big of an issue, but it's really just a limitation to the apps. So you don't get every app that you might use. And in our industry, with us using 5-10 programs in a day, it's nice to be able to have access to all of them in one place. So private cloud, you get that. You get all the programs that you want, but the internal value is, or the value of the connectivity is limited to your company. You can't connect with another company and have the same value and response time that you would as if you were in a hosted environment. And you're still in the IT business at that point. You're actually investing a ton of money to get the performance that you would get if you connected to either a public or a private hosted cloud. And so the cost is a big deal. And then finally, the private hosted cloud. And we've talked about some of the negatives. I don't have them specifically listed out, but we're going to address some of those a little bit later. So, but the sync and save times, it's as if you're working on site. Little to no lag time in the mouse clicks. Work set and linked file ownership and clarity. You don't have to worry about, linking files together. No upload or download time because it's all in one place. Real-time collaboration. You have your unlimited apps and programs, is whatever you currently use. Easy to set up and manage. You get out of the IT business. That's where this cost savings is. And then power computing from your laptop, smartphone, iPad, tablet, whatever you use. Doesn't really matter. And basically reduce cost. So this is just some of the devices. We've talked about a lot of this already. Skip over that. So there's just some of the applications that you can run in it. Like I said, you're not really limited. There's SharePoint, you mentioned that. So redundancy, you talked about some of the problems that happen. So if you have a power outage now in your company, what do? Are you dead in the water? So if you have a power outage in the cloud, you go to Starbucks or go home and you're back up. If you have your internet go out, same thing. If the internet or the power goes out on our end, we have generators and power backups, and we have triple redundancy on the internet connection with 3 different providers in 3 different locations. that make sure that doesn't happen on our end. But on your end, you can just pick up, and the mobility is the key. It's the ability to get up and go somewhere else where you can connect. So we talked about the power loss, coffee shop, stuff like that. And you might even choose to work at the coffee shop, I don't know. But, so security, how much security do you have? Biometric access to get into our website. You actually have to have a handprint, a key fob, and a passcode to get into our data center, and you have to have a reason to be there. I can't get into my own data center. Like, I work for them. I can't get in. I don't have access with all those things that I just mentioned. You have to have a reason to be in our data center to be there. So particular technologies, it's kind of open doors, rigorous change control. So as software and hardware updates, we're able to update those to accommodate whatever needs there might be. So we talked about government and HIPAA situations. And third-party consultants, we actually have George Bush's old national security advisor, CEO. She tries to hack. She has a team of what she calls her ninjas. They try and hack into our data center on a regular basis. And if they find holes, they let us know, and we go about the process to fix them. You were talking about costs, Luis. So there's an example of some of the costs. So
I'll have to get this thing.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
You need to go.
We're going to another meeting. I
Okay,
apologize.
no problem. So you're looking at probably about 35 to 65%. Now these are larger offices, but probably the best example is the one on the far right. Is a 5-office situation, 100 computers. I'm seeing that kind of savings down to about 30, 40 people. Now if you get into 5, 10 people, the cost savings are not there. It's not going to be cheaper on paper. However, it's the time savings. It's the ability to access things. And how much does that cost you? So this is just some firms that are currently in the Advanced 2000 cloud. And I don't know if you know some of those or not. So let me just skip over this. We've talked about this over and over again. But let me show you the cloud really quick here. So I haven't even tested the internet, so I have no idea what the connectivity here is going to be. But so this is the login. It's basically logging into my virtual machine. And this machine is in...
Have you connected to the Wi-Fi?
Maybe not. Let me try something.
Oh, the guest one will log you out after an hour.
It will?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to log in.
Oh.
I can connect you real quick with my password.
Looks like I'm connected. Yep, well.
Sign in. You have to sign
Let me just try something else. See if. Yep. No.
It's good.
So let me try that again.
Are you connected as a guest or with the?
Sorry, I'll tell you what. Not sure what that's about.
If you're connected as a guest, there are some bars you can access. As a student, you have access.
That should be right. Okay, I'm getting on my iPad. So now this is just through LTE, and this is on an iPad, so I don't have a mouse. But you can do this with any computer. So that's my computer in Buffalo. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'll pass it around. And you guys can play with it. But like I'm going to fire up in Revit. Let's run it on my machine. Pass it around. So I'm not sure on that. It looked like it was hooked up to the internet. But, but the idea being that you can access it from multiple devices, multiple ways. And you're literally, I don't know if you touch the screen, but you click and it literally clicks immediately. So we have good enough service here in Texas, in most places that I've ever been, that it feels like I'm working at my own machine. Now the bandwidth requirements, this is another thing to be concerned about. You do have to have a minimum bandwidth per user. So the minimum is roughly a half a meg up and down, but ideally is 1 meg per user up and down. So, if you have 5 megs up and down, you could handle 5 people, no problem. Now, as far as the internet, if you're worried about, well, I still need to do my own internet stuff, I've got other things going on, we can provide internet from our end that is above and beyond whatever you have. We can actually probably get you 200 and whatever megs, of internet service from our end, even though you're only on a 5 meg connection local or a 1 meg connection or whatever it is that you're on. So actually, it's just whatever you're willing to pay for as far as the service, but we have access to it. And so the idea being that you can access it from anywhere. So I could do the same thing that I did on my iPad. I could do it on my phone. It's a little smaller, obviously. And then, the biggest problem with the iPad usually is the fact that you want a mouse. And so you may, if you're the kind of person that you need that mouse interaction, then you may want to, instead of having an iPad, have a dumb terminal laptop. They're like $400 or $500. And that way you get a keyboard, a mouse, screen, all that stuff. But you're not having to pay $2,000-$3,000 for this super machine to connect to. From a school perspective, think about that. Your student's expense would be, they have to invest in a $400 or $500 laptop that they connect to the service, and part of their service is covered in their tuition, and they have that as part of it they're getting. So those are all things that are available if you guys are.
What about the response on like a really massive model, let's say using using Revit? What's the response when, let's say, the trouble that I find the most obvious is like when you're orbiting around a really massive model, you see a lag between the movement, like the I don't know if you might call it.
There's a model in there, and if you want, you can open it up and spin it, and it's pretty minimal, if at all. You have to understand, it's like the processing is all done there. So all that's coming to you is graphic signals. That's it. So you're just getting updates of your screen. Now, Revit works extremely well. Inventor, does anybody use Inventor?
Yeah.
So Inventor is not as seamless, but it still works pretty well. So I've got some clients in California that are looking at using Inventor in the cloud. And they've been doing some testing. On our end, we're actually having to provide them a little more beefy machine to handle that issue that you're talking about. But the point is that it's possible. And the cost difference to them of the beefy machine versus the not as beefy machine is $10-$20 a month. So you're not talking about a huge expense to be able to accommodate that need. Sure. Any other questions? Well, I'll tell you what, I'll throw up a little internet kind of description of kind of what I said, but if you guys want to chat, whatever, and or have any more questions for you. Did everybody sign the sign-in sheet? It's right here. Okay. I'll if you guys have any questions or if you want to call me, just feel free to ask me. I'll give you a card and be glad to continue the conversation. So, but thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.